Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start today with the Department of Revenue.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Lynn Riley from the Department of Revenue, delighted to be here today to present the FY 2017 budget for our department. As we mentioned when we presented the amended FY16, quite a bit of the activity you see on this budget presentation before you is redistribution of service and dollars to correctly reflect where we are spending money within the agency for the services that we provide. So in most cases, the net effect is zero because we are moving a cost out of one program area to the actual area where that function is being delivered to more accurately reflect the cost of doing business in these different program areas. So I'll move quickly through those things and highlight the areas where we have specific appropriations that are different from the standard. In departmental administration, most of the appropriations shown there are across agency-wide or statewide changes to merit-based pay or other adjustments for personnel. There are a couple of line items for redistribution of funds, and also we are allocating technology costs from a separate technology program area to again be reflected in that service area where the technology costs really are being encumbered. For example, administration uses computer systems and a lot of data processing for those services, but we had it isolated in a technology budget that really didn't reflect what it cost for us to do those administrative tasks. So we are eliminating that technology service area or cost area and spreading it across the other specific program functions that we perform, so you understand the technology cost in that area as well. The forest land protection grants, the appropriation of just a little over $14 million is consistent with prior year's budgets. We are eliminating the separate area of fraud detection and prevention, and that is going to be reflected under Office of Special Investigations. Industry regulation, the changes there are primarily personnel and merit-based pay, as well as reflecting technology costs there and redistribution of service areas. Same for local government services. The line items are for merit-based pay adjustments, other agency or statewide personnel appropriations, redistribution on the second page of funds to reflect expenditures, and also to transfer the technology costs to show what technology costs are incurred in that service area of local government services. One of our first major changes is in local tax officials' retirement and FICA. There is actually a reduction in appropriation that is based on the forecast of reduced cost to the state of Georgia for that liability that we provide for funding for retirement for local tax officials. Motor vehicle entitling, motor vehicle registration and titling has the same line items for merit-based pay and other personnel costs, redistributing some of the services that were being paid for in other areas to reflect it in the appropriate space under motor vehicle registration, and also to bring in the technology costs that are directly attributable to motor vehicle registration and titling to show a total program cost of $32,738,000, which is an accurate reflection of what it costs for us to perform those services. Office of Special Investigations, similar adjustments for merit-based pay and other personnel costs, redistribution to align actual performance within that department, bringing in the technology costs that are utilized for special investigations, bringing in that $1,250,000 that was separately shown under fraud detection, now is being incorporated into special investigations, and that totaling for a program cost of just over $6 million. Revenue processing, similarly, just merit-based pay and other personnel adjustments, redistributing the funds to align with actual budget expenditures, and the technology allocation from the technology budget to revenue processing. Similarly, tax compliance, redistribution, funds for merit-based pay, transfer technology, and there is a small additional appropriation to provide for telecommunication needs within our tax compliance service area. Tax policy, similarly, a funding for merit-based pay, other personnel items, redistribution to show where these costs are actually being expended, same with technology. Taxpayer services, exactly the same. The only change you'd see there is that the name change is changed from customer service now to taxpayer service. We believe that since we provide service to taxpayers, they aren't necessarily our customers, that it would be more reflective to call it taxpayer services. And if you'll see that technology support services is being effectively zeroed out. We are moving all of those funds out of that service area, and if you flip over to the next page, the total for that section is 0. And Madam Chair and members of the committee, that is a brief summary of the activity that we have and are grateful for the appropriations for our FY 2017 operations. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, Chairman Hatchett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I think you may have answered it in the last thing you said, but all of these redistribution of funds to properly align budget to expenditures, you're just aligning all your technological experts with the actual areas that they work in?
Correct. That is correct, as well as any hardware and systems costs that are used in those service areas.
Okay, because when there were so many, I couldn't keep up with where.
It's a lot of moving around, and this is after doing some analysis last year and realizing that a lot of the activity in the budgets that have been presented in the past didn't really reflect what was happening and the true cost to serve that or to deliver that to our taxpayers. So instead of keeping technology isolated, we thought it was more accurate to say that any one function has a component of technology cost to it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Dickey. Oops.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner, I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
You've got a big job, big department over there. I appreciate the good job you do. I've got a couple of questions. One about the forest land protection grants. Are we paid up to the counties, or is it any delay? Could you expand a little bit how those funds are going to our counties that depend on those funds?
Certainly. We receive applications on a continual basis from the counties for forest land protection grants. We will pay them based on what is appropriated by the General Assembly, and we are seeing, in general, experience somewhere between $30 and $34 million per year of grant requests coming to us. In the past 2 years, the General Assembly has funded about half during the approval of the fiscal year budget, and then generally the other half is appropriated in the amended budget. So as we pay out over a period, the funds are appropriated by you and generally keep up with the demand that we are having submitted to us for those grants.
So follow up, this $14 million, is that, where does that get us?
It will pay for about a half of year's grants requests. So
that are in right now?
Correct. But the amended FY16 budget was getting an additional $15 million.
Okay.
And if that appropriation stays all the way through to the governor's desk, we'll be immediately paying that out, or over the next 6 months paying that money out on the current request we have before us.
Okay.
And then likely in time for this next appropriation, when approved, if it's approved at this level, then we will start paying out on that.
Okay. I've got a follow-up question, Chairman, if I can. Talking along the technology lines. Mm-hmm. I think you and I, or I got a local person that serves on our local tax appraisal board, or what's it called?
Board of Assessors?
Board of Assessors, mm-hmm. Excuse me. Finding a lot of difficulty finding time to take y'all's courses that y'all provide to local assessor boards.
Correct.
They have to serve, they have to have so many hours of. And I think we discussed about some technology that these people could take these courses online. Have you seen possibility or put any funds in this budget to try to move toward that direction instead of these people taking a whole week out of their time to come sit in front of a classroom?
Thank you so much for that question, Representative Dickey. Yes, we have entered into a contract with the Carl Vinson Institute, and we are developing webinar offerings for the training for our local tax officials, not only the Board of Assessors, but tax commissioners, boards of equalization. All are required to take significant amount of training to perform those services. So we are developing those online opportunities going forward, and that's currently being developed by Carl Vinson.
Well, thank you very much. I certainly applaud those efforts.
Well, Representative, I thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think you were the genesis of this great idea, and we're very grateful.
That's all.
You sure? Okay, I want to go back to forest land protection and continue kind of on that line. I haven't heard it recently, but I have heard it in the past that, you know, this was promised, we're not delivering. So when you say that you're paying on what's in the chute basically right now with the 15 from the amended and the 14 from this one, what is in the chute right now? Like what's outstanding at this point that we owe to these local governments?
Right now, we have in the FY 2016 budget, we have about $3.5 million remaining to pay out. And that was in the original 15 budget. The amended budget, we're getting, should it be passed to the governor's desk, an additional $15 million that would provide us with a total of $18 million in funds available to pay. Outstanding, we have about, right now we have about $42 million in the queue. That $18 million would bring us down to 23. And this additional $14 million appropriation in the FY17 would bring us down to just about $9 million in the queue. We do not know when a grant request will come to us. They come when the local governments have them ready and prepared. But we've seen fairly consistently somewhere between 30 and 34 million each year in total grants that are submitted to the department.
Okay, very helpful. Can you update us on the current status of the computer system that you're setting up with driver services?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question as well. We recently released the RFP for the new drives program, and that's an integrated system with the Department of Driver Services. The RFP response period will close in the next 2 weeks, and an evaluation team will begin their work at that point to identify the most responsive and appropriate vendor. And our timelines at this point are aggressive, but we hope to be able to award before the end of this current fiscal year and begin the actual systems installation. We've been very grateful to have the full support of the Georgia Technology Authority. Calvin Rhodes, as director, has been instrumental in making sure that we are finding the best experts for us to be able to provide this new technology, which will allow our taxpayers to be able to do driver's license functions as well as motor vehicle functions, hopefully entirely on a web-based platform, so we can eliminate some of the need to have to physically go and take your time at a tag or a driver's license facility.
Okay. Any other questions, members? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time to be with you today.
All right, next up we have the Department of Administrative Services. Members, this is on pages 7 and 8.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sid Johnson. I'm Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Administrative Services, and we do have a couple of budget changes this year, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to those today. Before I do, I want to take a step back and give you a little bit of background. The mission of the Department of Administrative Services is to help improve efficiency and compliance and performance across state government, mainly in 5 areas: procurement, HR, risk management, fleet, and surplus. And I'm pleased to report that we're making quite a bit of progress in these areas, and I want to go through some of those. And I want to stress that this is not DOAS, but these are all agencies in state government contributing to these factors. First of all, Georgia's risk claims over the last 3 years have decreased 8.8%. So that's workers' comp, liability, and property, so 8.8%. And the cost of the risk program has come down 10% in that same period. So that's a significant change. Also, 70% of all the surplus proceeds, all the surplus property, when we sell that, 70% of those proceeds go back to the agencies. The other 30% we retain as a fee. That used to be 10%, but now it's 70%, so that's been a huge change. Also, the fee that we charge to state agencies for vehicle maintenance, we were charging 7%, it's now 2%. So we've reduced that cost to the agencies. I'm also happy to say that 82% of agency chief procurement officers, that's about 82 folks, because there's about 100 agencies, have earned their training certification, which means we've got professionals out there managing the procurement function. And also over $50 million in price reductions on goods and services have been captured on statewide contracts over the last 4 years. And we've rebid 5 employee flexible benefit contracts and maintained, these are the vision, life insurance, those type of flex benefit policies for employees. We've rebid 5 of those and maintained or reduced costs to the employees while increasing the quality of the services they got. That's important because all of that, those premiums come out of employee pockets. There's no subsidy there for employees. So we've tried to take care of our employees in that. So as you can see, we're trying to make some progress in the area of efficiencies and compliance and performance across the state, and the agencies have done a great job of helping on that. As you can see on the tracking sheet, we do have 4 requests. They're listed on the front page of the handout that I've got, and I'm assuming everybody's got that. 3 of those are in the risk management program. 1 of those is in the human resource administration area. So I'd like to start with risk management first. So on page 2, we've laid out the 4 lines of insurance: unemployment, workers' comp, property, and liability. And what we're asking for is on row 5, FY17 billing request, we've asked for a decrease of $5.5 million, and I'll show you the historical context in just a minute to show you why that is possible. And then on workers' comp, we've asked for a $2 million increase to cover cost on the workers' comp. So as you can see at the very top for unemployment, we think, well, the beginning FY15 trust fund balance was $13.5 million. As you take in revenues and costs over the next 2 years, at the bottom we see a $14 million trust fund balance. And then for workers' comp, similarly, we're going to start with $17.2 million, and with the increase, we're going to end up with $14.4 million in the trust fund balance. Still a decrease, but so underlying the need for an increase in premiums. If you and these are premiums to agencies, so it's internal to state government. So if you'll turn the page, I'll give you a quick historical context for these. You see in the upper left-hand corner, the unemployment trust fund. You see since FY07, I want to point your attention to the black line, which is the cost of the program. Those costs have come down quite a bit since the recession. And you see that the red line, the fund balance, has gone quite high, which puts us in a position of being able to reduce the premiums, which is the green line. So that shows that reflects a $4.5 million decrease in the premium there. Going straight over to the right, workers' comp trust fund, you see the black and the green line are pretty much on top of each other. That's the program costs and the billings. And actually, we're at a deficit on an annual basis, so program costs exceed the premium. And you see the red line, which is the fund balance. It continues to dwindle slowly but surely over time. So we are asking for a $2 million increase to cover that. I'll be glad to go through property and liability if that would be helpful for anybody. All right. We'll move on. The next item included in our budget is the Educators Excess Professional Liability Insurance Program. This is the governor's initiative, and we're playing a little bit of catch-up ball on this one, working with the governor's office and OPB. What we are proposing to do is put a statewide policy in place to provide coverage for individual teachers. Right now, teachers have two options for professional liability coverage. They can get it through the teachers' associations, and they can buy it as an option out of their own pocket. We estimate, this is our estimate, not founded on any basis, but other than professional judgment, that those premiums we're guessing is about $400 a year, and it is primary coverage for the teachers. Some school districts, we're assuming that a strong majority of school districts offer this to their teachers. We assume it automatically covers all the teachers at no cost to the teachers. Again, this would be primary coverage. So what we're proposing as part of the governor's initiative is putting a statewide policy in place. This would be $1 million per occurrence, $3 million aggregated. It would be excess coverage. This would not be primary. It would be excess on top of what they might already have from the teachers' associations or the school districts. The coverage would be extended to all teachers, full-time, part-time, and administrative staff. We don't know what the cost is yet. We had this similar policy about 5 years ago. You can see what the cost is, about $500,000 at that point. We do anticipate assuming the same level of coverage. Costs would be considerably higher at this point. We don't know. But the request in the budget is a yes. We're not asking for specific dollars. We're going to pay for this policy out of existing liability funds currently, and then see what it is, and then make any future budget requests in the future. We realize that this is flexible. We're not giving you a lot of hard facts. Right now it is in flux, but we'll be glad to work with the committee and staff as things progress. And then our final request is $3.2 million increase to our Human Resource Administration budget. Before I get to the details, I'd like to step back and again give you a little bit of background on page 5. 3 years ago, you may remember the State Personnel Administration was eliminated and the HR function came over to DOAS. At that point, the budget and the staffing were cut significantly. It wasn't quite half, but it was pretty darn close. Many of the functions were stopped. However, one that was added specifically was the audit function. It's a statutory requirement. It had not been done at that point, so we were given guidance to do that. So our task at that point was to rebuild the HR function. And at that point, we put together a 3-year plan, and for the last 3 years, we've been working that plan. Our focus is to attract and retain employees, and that's important because we do have a turnover problem across the state agencies. As you can see by the graphs, turnover is up to about 18.4% last year, FY15, and our workforce is very young in terms of experience. You see the other graph, about 32% have experienced less than 2 years and 40% less than 4 years. So we have got a fairly inexperienced workforce. This is important because the turnover is important because it's expensive. And we have to train, we have to hire, we have to bring them online and onboard them, and then the professional judgment costs us sometimes as well. At the same time, this limits our ability to deliver the core missions across state government. And so our response has been to give the tools and training to agencies needed to improve recruitment and retention techniques that are specific to their agencies and aimed at the causes of the retention. Now, pay is certainly important, but it's not everything. How professional is the manager? How good is the manager is one thing. The culture of the organization, how professional is it? And also, are there career growth opportunities? And so these are the things we're trying to address. And you can see with this timeline that we laid out, this is the plan we've been working. We've been laying a foundation. We've done the HR audit. We've rolled it out to 24 agencies. Ultimately, we want to do 77 agencies, and we'll get to that in a minute. We've updated board rules and worked with the agencies on helping them understand board rules and advisories, and we put a governance infrastructure in place. And this is important because we're not the only agency involved in the HR function. You've got ERS, TRS, Department of Community Health does the state health program. So we've got to get all these agencies in the same room talking about policy. So we've done that. In addition, we've implemented an applicant tracking system. I'm not going to read all of these. You can see them there under attracting talent. But I will point out agency recruiting strategies. We are working with agencies to come up with specific strategies that they can use. And so we're beginning to see evidence of a coordinated system, and I'm very excited to report that. And what you've seen is a job classification and compensation structure put in place in January. It's been over 10 years since we've updated that. We finally got that done. You'll see in this year's budget monies for targeted job classes to work on retention. Pay increases for performance, and again, agency-specific recruitment and retention strategies. We can't show you a cause and effect yet. I'm not in that position, but again, we're starting to push that flywheel and get things moving in the right place where we're making rational decisions at the agency level and at policy level around HR, and I'm very excited about that. So we're ready for the next step, and we need your help to do the next step. We want to do manager leadership training, and we do plan on doing that. We don't need additional resources to do that, but we do need your support in putting out a learning management system with the Department of Revenue could certainly use for training for the Board of Assessors that we just talked about a minute ago. That would be a great platform for that. Performance management, and we want to fund the HR audit at 100%, all of those 77 agencies. So if you turn the next page. What we're asking for is a $3.2 million increase, which is part of a new funding model. The old funding model has been based on headcount, and you'll see in the graph on the right there, headcount has come down considerably, which has impacted our revenues. However, you see in the pie chart that 16% of our workforce is temporary, and it's not reflected in the headcount. So I would say that this, the headcount basis is antiquated, and we've worked with OPB and request that we shift that to actual payroll versus headcount. And so, and even though headcount comes down, temporary services or labor is still there, and our services stay the same. Whether you're at this level or this level, our services are at the same level regardless, because we're at an enterprise level, not the specific transaction level. So we are asking for a $3.2 million increase in addition to the change in the funding model, and that's going to cover four things. One is it's going to build in the 3% pay increases. That's included in this year's budget. Typically, agencies get funding for that directly. We don't, and this is a way to absorb that. We want to fund the administrative overhead in the agency at 100%. For the most part, we don't get appropriated state funds, so we have to fund our administrative program. We have to draw from the business programs, and so HRA is funded at 63%. We want to fund that at 100%, so they're not pulling from the service delivery budgets. And then, again, we want to fully fund the HR audit. Again, we've been doing 24. We want to do the full 77. And then we're going to we want to fund talent management system to support the learning management system and the performance management system. I feel like I've talked a lot. The last page, talent management system, and what the two parts of that, the learning management, which provides online training delivery, as well as a way to manage that training, and it would help retention purposes. And then the performance management will support a basic management function, which also supports retention and performance purposes. So again, I'm not going to go through that and read it to you. You can see it there, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
No questions, it looks like. Representative Barr.
At the beginning, you said something that was kind of piqued my interest, and I appreciate you going through this for us, and I enjoy the handout. Thank you.
Good.
You said you went from a 10% to a 70% payback. Can you explain that and tell us when that change happened and what precipitated that?
Yeah. Now, the 90-10 split, 90 going to DOAS, 10 going to the agencies, goes way back. It was when we had warehouses over the state, and we had considerable cost associated with those warehouses. About in 2005-06 maybe, we went to a virtual model where we got rid of the warehouses, and we began selling stuff online. That wiped out a whole lot of costs, but at that point we went 50-50, but now we're able to, after all said and done, at the end of the day, 70% goes back to the agencies.
And the 30%, is there a number that y'all came up with that's what our cost is? It's just
No,
kind of a floating.
Typically it's, I think 60-40 is the retail price, so to speak. But any huge surplus sale, we cap our fee at $10,000. So anything over that, we give back to the agencies. So that's why it ends up 70-30.
Thank you very much.
Representative Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go back a couple of little things. In your HR function,
Yes, sir.
you needed additional revenue for to fund an HR audit 100%. Could you explain to me just what an HR audit 100% is?
Yes, sir. An audit is where we set up criteria for what we believe is a good HR operation in the agencies. And it's a self-audit, so we provide it to the agencies to take. And it's areas like compensation administration and training, and I can't remember, there's 5 areas and I can't remember all of them, but it's the 5 basic areas of HR administration in the agencies. So we take 24 of those and give them the self-audit, and then we come back and analyze those results from the audit and provide specific guidance to the agencies based on gaps or needs or those kind of things. So specific help and assistance to those 24 agencies. At the same time, we come back and say, this may be a clue to what the greater needs are for the enterprise. So we allocate our training resources and other support resources based on those issues that come up in the audits. So we feel like it's very important for us to have that insight into what's going on in the agencies and then provide the help to the agencies to help recruitment, to help retention, to help compliance with federal and state laws so we don't get sued and have other issues with the workforce.
I like that, but so that's something new that you've never done before. And
Well,
that's
it's a statutory requirement. It was not doing. We were not doing it prior to it coming over 3 years ago, but 3 years ago we started that process because that was part of the guidance we got when it came over to DOAS.
So that's a new cost, new expense you're having to take on.
Well, we've got, no, at that point it was.
At that point, okay.
But,
All right.
so status quo is 24 agencies moving forward.
Another question, if I may. Talking about the funding model, the state employees' numbers have gone down and you're getting less revenue in. Why do you go to a whole nother model? Why not just increase per employee or whatever you charge, and you didn't not doing that or including temporary? I know temporary takes just as much time as a full-time.
That's right.
So why on another model?
We felt like payroll was less volatile than headcount. and raising that up, because we think headcount may be changing quite a bit and even going further down. So we think payroll is a better is it a perfect representative? No, it could be volatile too, but we think it's less volatile and a better basis for.
Well, it's steadily would be increasing. Looks like your efficiencies, if you've got less numbers of workers, less work, budget might reflect that instead of the increasing payroll that'll be happening. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. Well, that was the rationale, was a less volatile basis, sustainable over time, so we're not always coming here and saying, we need a different basis. We need a different basis.
So agencies that have a lot of high-priced employees might pay more than somebody that has twice as many at half as. I mean, I don't.
Everything else being equal, I guess they would, yeah.
Okay.
If I understand your point.
You understand my point? It's you're disincentivizing. Never mind. Like you made that decision. Oh, I do have one more, if I may. On those charts, unemployed trust fund. Your actuarial recommendation and your fund balance are just about at the same point where you need it.
Unemployment? I'm sorry.
Unemployment.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me.
That's correct.
But you're recommending a decrease, billing's going down, and you still want to continue to go down. Are you going to be able to maintain that recommendation level doing that?
No, sir, and we typically don't try to meet that actuarial recommendation. As you can see on the others, we're not even close.
Right.
So we, for most of these, we do cash basis. We're just trying to get through the year and cover what our annual costs are, with some kind of reserve in case we have a problem.
So you're not showing us what reserves you have here?
Yes, sir. That's the red line in all of these graphs is the fund balance.
Excuse me. I misstated what I was going to ask you. Okay. Thank you.
We'll be glad to follow up with any questions you might have, though.
Any other questions? Thank you, Sid.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Next, we're going to hear from GTA, and we're on page 8.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak with you today. I know, Madam Chairman, when we checked in with you, we have, I guess, a 0 total in the book, and so she asked that I just spend a few minutes telling you a little bit about our organization and what we do. So I'll just run through those. We are heavily involved in the IT operation for the executive branch, working with the agencies. In the larger agencies, we're focused really on the network and infrastructure layer, and then the agencies actually look after the application layer. So when I speak to infrastructure, we're really talking about the hardware, all the different components of that, from routers to servers, those type of things, all the way down to a desktop computer, laptop computer. The network, of course, is the connectivity, as we connect agencies across the state and even within inside a building, all of those components for the communication between all of these devices. We're in the telecommunications space, so as an agency needs telephone services across the state, we're also making sure that our service providers meet the needs of the agencies in delivering those type of services. So I thought I'd just cover really the large areas that we participate in. I've mentioned infrastructure, the data center. We also are responsible for IT policy. The policies and standards that we create may give an agency direction on what type of encryption they should be using. They need security plans for their systems, those type of things, and then a layer down actually giving them direction on how to accomplish that type of work. Oversight is really focused in the IT projects area. Mentioned the Drives project earlier. We're very involved with them, not only from trying to assist them with having a good solid solution, but an independent group within GTA will provide oversight to both the work that we're doing and the work of the agency. Again, just to make sure we're following good practices. We really look at 3 areas in that space: schedule, budget, and then making sure we're meeting the scope of the project if it's staying in alignment with what the business requirements were. Another area that is extremely important to the state is promoting IT security. So again, cybersecurity. I know that we talked last time in front of the board about the new cybersecurity board. So those type of areas, if an agency has an event that they need assistance with in the IT security space, again, that we have some resources to assist them. The state portal, so when you go to www.georgia.gov, there's, I think, well north of around 75 agencies that leverage that system, again, providing a common look and feel across the state, but also doing it in a way that it now works with every size device that an individual may be using, from a smartphone to actually if they're using their browser. We also have a group that's responsible for data exchange, data sharing. A good example of how that is used: you go to buy a hunting license, you haven't paid your child support. We're using this system to connect the 2 agencies to make sure that as agencies have needs of data in other agencies, that they can easily get to it, and it's done in a secure way. Radio frequency management, we do that for both state and municipalities. So if you're with forestry or the Georgia State Patrol and you need a new radio frequency, someone has to make sure that that frequency is available and it doesn't step not only on adjacent jurisdictions, but also working with our state partners that live around us, Alabama and Tennessee, to make sure that frequency is available. The other item that I'll mention is 1-800-GEORGIA. If you have a constituent who cannot figure out who to talk to in state government, they call the 1-800-GEORGIA call center, and our group will help direct them and plug them into the right group within state government. So we're trying to promote enterprise approach in the IT space. I mentioned following the networks. We service around 100,000 users in that space. Of the 1,400 different entities that we service, a large number of those, probably the largest number of those, is municipalities, city and county governments. A lot of them use it to get into the crime system data, so it's actually connectivity in. But a lot of the smaller cities and counties will also leverage it for their phone services and all that they'll use within their operations. We provide enterprise email to many other state agencies. State has one mainframe that we use in the executive branch. So again, leveraging those type of services to more efficiently use them. State network security, I mentioned earlier that as individuals need help with designing security, or if they have a response, an issue that they need a response team to help with, we help in that area as well. In 2009, we started a privatization effort with the 15 largest agencies that represent about 85% of the IT spend. There's around 35,000 users in that space. Again, that's infrastructure, desktop support. I think there's around 1,200 state positions that moved off of state payrolls, and we leverage organizations, and I guess I'd say 2 large organizations initially, IBM and AT&T, that provided those services. Today, I add to that list that Capgemini and Microsoft is also our prime suppliers. Working for the state at any given time across those service providers is around 1,000 individuals meeting the needs of the agencies around the state. I would like to point out that probably our biggest accomplishment over the last several years is the completion of our modernization effort. That effort completed in September of this year. So again, where we now have standardization, you won't find a server within our scope of work that we're responsible for that's older than 60 months. They're on refresh cycles. They're in the operational budgets of agencies that you approve. Networks, redundancies. One of the reasons as we are attacked in our network that we have fared much better than other states in that space is the way that's designed, and the redundancy that if there's an issue within the state from a technical standpoint, or again from a cyber attack, we have the ability to move that network between Atlanta and Nashville. Probably one of the biggest issues that an agency now not an issue, but a result of that work that an agency would see today is our uptime for agencies is dramatically different from when I started 5 years ago. So the completion of that work has a very material impact on citizens who are trying to get their driver's license, their tag. Just the fact that these systems are up and running and our uptime is notably improved. We're continuing to work to mature our model by allowing more providers to participate in these services that are provided across the state. We're trying to make sure that we're very responsive to agencies as technology is changing so that we can add in new services. Probably the largest service that we changed in the last probably 18 months is moving to a cloud-based email system that I think you've probably heard of, Microsoft Office 365. Again, giving agencies a much more modern system, bringing storage costs down to almost zero in those type of systems, and has been something very well received with the agencies and provides them additional tools that they can leverage that's part of that suite. And again, one of the other areas that we get involved in is just helping the agencies through these large IT projects. The integrated eligibility system is probably the largest project going on in the state today, where we have several key people plugged in and trying to just help them move through all of the work that's required to get a project of that magnitude done over a 3 or 4 year period. And then the DRIVES project that is beginning to start hopefully soon as we get through the RFP process. And then the last thing that I would mention is our key focus for the year is to focus in the cybersecurity space to try to make sure that we're providing agencies what they need from education, training, to really focus on making our systems more secure. The threats change every day, and that target that we are staying after continues to move, and it takes all of us working together to actually improve that space. So I think that gives you just a quick overview of the different areas we're involved in, and I'm happy to take any questions. And also, Madam Chairman, I wanted to thank you for you and your committee taking time to come spend some time with us and actually see some of the work that we're doing. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Of course.
Thank you.
Representative?
I'm going to ask a question asking Mo today.
I like it.
Do you do any services for the Office of Banking and Finance?
We have worked to provide them some direction and insight, more so from the oversight standpoint. They are not one of what we call our full service agencies, so probably what they're receiving from us is voice and connectivity network.
Okay.
So
They were in here the other day and were severely lacking in some software updating things that we heard about, so just curious about that.
yes, sir. That's we wish they were in our infrastructure layer, and but they're not a full service agency.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, members, thank you for your time. It's our last agency, and meeting adjourned.